ghost of the future, I fear you more than any specter that I have seen, said Ebenezer Scrooge. I suspect, though, that he knew his fate. He knew what fate this specter had as revelation. But let's be honest, don't we all? Don't we all know ultimately what the future holds for us? I mean, the old adage is, right, there are two things that are certain in life, and those are death and taxes. Well, I don't want to say a whole lot about the latter, but let's talk about the previous. Death. Scrooge must have known that this angel, this ghost, if you will, of the Christmas yet to come, of future, held in it the likelihood of his demise. I mean, Marley, his partner, appeared to him earlier that night to present just that idea, saying that I lived and now I have died, and he bears the chains that he carries as burden in eternity. And Scrooge's was as long as his, and he'd forged it for 7 Christmases since. So he must have known that the angel, the ghost, came to present the reality of his end. There was a little boy who was on his way home from Sunday school one day, and he took a shortcut through the cemetery. And as he walked, he read a few of the epitaphs of those whose lives had come to an end as well. And one caught his attention, and he began to read the inscription on the headstone. "Stop there, you, as you go by. For as you are, so once was I. But as I am, so you shall soon be. So prepare yourself to follow me," it read. The boy thought of that for a second. He reached into his pocket and he pulled a broken crayon from his trousers, and he knelt down and began to scribble on the stone of that gravestone. And the boy, as he did, wrote this inscription beneath the original text: "To follow you, I am content, but until I know, I will not go, until I know which way you went." Scrooge must have known. He must have known that it was, even before it was revealed to him, that the ghost of Christmas yet to come would foretell his demise. All of us know it. We're not forever meant for this world, but we'd rather not think of it, correct? Scrooge himself, in the shadows of his own tombstone, if you will, cried out to the Spirit, "Why do you show this to me if all that is past and all that is to come has no hope for change?" You see, it's with those words that Dickens writes for the first time that this good spirit, as Scrooge calls him, this good spirit of the Christmas of yet to come, reacts to Scrooge. Before, he really shows no emotion, no response except simply to nod and to point. But in this moment, Dickens wrote this: "For the first time, the hand appeared to shake, to tremor, if you will, at the response of what Scrooge was saying." "Your nature intercedes for me," Scrooge uttered. "Assurance for me that I may change these shadows that you have shown me by an altered life." You see, what I think Dickens is trying to portray in this is that for the first time, as Ebenezer Scrooge realizes that he has the opportunity, and now he has in his heart the desire to change these shadows, to do something different, it's then in that moment that the spirit of Christmas is yet to come begins to respond to what is happening in the heart of Ebenezer Scrooge. I believe what grips Scrooge so desperately may not be, in fact, the fear of death, but it is the regret that he won't have the opportunity to awake and to change those shadows of what is to come. He won't be able to live differently, to live an altered life in response to what he's seen from the Christmases of past and present and now future. He cries out, "I will honor Christmas in my heart and try to keep it all the year. I will not shut out the lessons that you have taught me." He wants the opportunity to be different, to live a changed life, to live in response to the grace that is being given to him, knowing that indeed it was, from another movie, A Wonderful Life. Max E. Dunham, a pastor, author, and public speaker, once wrote these words. He said, "There's nothing wrong with growing old and dying. In fact, we all do it. The problem is that too many people die and then grow old." Think about that for just a second. It's believed that when the death of Calvin Coolidge was reported, someone remarked, "But how can you tell?" Now, I didn't know Calvin Coolidge personally, but I suspect he was a bit of a dry character. I hope that no one can say that of our lives once our demise is reported, that they wonder, how can you tell the difference? The playwright George Bernard Shaw once said, "The epitaph of many people should read, 'Died at 30, buried at 60. Let that not be the case for us. Fazala Gilani once wrote a poem entitled "A Little Mixed Up." It goes like this. Listen, I want to share it with you. It's really good. "Just a line to say I'm living, that I'm not among the dead, though I am getting more forgetful and more mixed up in my head. For sometimes I can't remember when I stand at foot of stairs if I must go up for something or if I've come down from there. And before the fridge, so often my poor mind is filled with doubt. Have I just put food away, or am I here to take some out? And there are times when it is dark out, with my nightcap on my head. I don't know if I'm retiring or if I just got out of bed. So it is true that it is my turn to write to you. There's no need for getting sore. I may think that I have written and don't want then to write again and be a bore. So remember, I do love you, and I wish that you were here, but now it's nearly mail time, so I must say goodbye, my dear. There I stood beside the mailbox with a face so very red. Instead of mailing your letter, I have opened it and read instead." Loss of memory. Being, as the poet says, a little mixed up. Maybe you can relate to that, a little mixed up. It is okay. It is not bad. It's not a bad price to have paid for staying alive for such a long time, if that be your case. But we must, however, be vigilant about avoiding dying before we grow old, as Dunham said. And as he offered us to pray, we so should pray as well. "Deliver us, thou, O God, from dying and then growing old." But the truth is, it happens in our lives sometimes. It happens in the lives of those around us. It can happen to any of us. It happened to Scrooge. Listen to again what the Apostle Paul wrote in Thessalonians that David just read for us. "For you are children of the light and children of the day. You are not of the night or of the darkness. So then let us not sleep as others do, but let us keep awake and be sober," he says. You see, the word that Paul uses here for keep awake, it literally means to watch. It's a Greek word that is Gregorio. And Gregorio means to keep awake or to be spiritually alert. Paul is talking about spiritual alertness. His metaphor that he used, metaphorically writing, I believe, is intended instead to encourage us to pay attention, to stay alert, to not be, if you will, apathetic or distracted. Don't become blind and oblivious to what is happening in the world around us. I think Scrooge spent so much time doing just that. He missed what was going on around him. He missed celebrating Christmas. He missed enjoying the life of his family with his nephew and their family. He missed so much. You see, the death of apathy and cynicism, pessimism, can so easily set in our lives. The drowsiness of distraction and dumbness, if you will, despair can take hold of us like a desperately needed nap. You ever felt that way? I often do on Sunday afternoons, what they call the clergy coma. hear this truth. It's easy to fall asleep, even when we're supposedly awake in life. At every level of life, it is easy, but Paul calls us to instead be alert. He calls us to watchfulness, to alertness, to wakefulness, if you will. He is sounding the warning that the day is not for sleeping, it is to be awake. Christians are to be awake. Ebenezer Scrooge became so focused on one thing in his life, and it was the pursuit of wealth to keep poverty at bay, that he was consumed by and impoverished by the spirit of desire, of fear, if you will. And he became the living dead. It was the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and then this future ghost that awakened him for all that he had missed or all that he had forgotten. The ghost of Christmas past reminded him of what joyful life looked like in his old partner Fezziwig, his boss when he was young. It reminded him of what he lived for that was something greater than money, and that was love. Love in a relationship of his betrothed. It reminded him of the blessings of life. And the ghost of Christmas present showed Ebenezer Scrooge that there was happiness even in spite of poverty in his employee, Bob Cratchit's, and his family. Poor as poor could be, but nonetheless happy and joyful to celebrate life and togetherness. And the ghosts showed him all that he was missing because he was awake but dead in life. I love to tell this story. In fact, my wife Becky has told it on herself, but let me recount it for you. When we were those dinks I told you about before, that means double income, no kids, before our children, when we were both working, I was in seminary, she was teaching as a kindergarten teacher in my old hometown of Argenta. I would go to Indianapolis 2.5 hours away through the week, and she would stay and teach in our hometown. And while I was away and she had come home from teaching kindergarten kids all day, she was overwhelmed by that need to nap. And so she laid down to take a nap after school. And as she slept, she rested well, slept deep apparently. And when she awoke, she realized, oh my goodness, I've slept through the whole night. She looked at her watch, and it was about 5 or 10 after 7. She had to be at school by 7:30, and it was a good 15-minute drive. So she shot up off the couch. She did her hair up as best as she could and changed her clothes so she didn't go back to school in the same clothes she'd worn the previous day. She jumped in the car and began to drive to White School, that little country kindergarten school surrounded by cornfields. And as she's driving frantically, white-knuckled, hoping there are no police officers because she may have been breaking the speed limit by just a little bit. She's driving and driving and driving, and as she's heading north towards the school. She looks to her right, she looks to her left, she looks to her right, she looks to her left, and she realizes, wait a minute, the sun is rising in the west. It was about 7:15 p.m., and it was only then that she pulled over and began to laugh and cry all at the same time, realizing that she hadn't slept through the night. She'd only slept a few hours, and it was the same day. So she turned around and came back home, and she told me the story over the phone that evening and made me promise never to tell it. Until she told it, and then I figured it was okay. We can be asleep in the midst of a life that is otherwise awake. We can miss so much because we get distracted by life, or we become cynical or pessimistic or apathetic about things that go on around us. I get a sense, at least in my own spirit, that we've felt that way, maybe just trapped by, hidden from all that goes on in the world because we sort of close ourselves in to protect ourselves and our own lives and our own experience. I watch the stories and I see the pictures and I read about the tragedy of things that go on in the world, like Aleppo this week. just as one example, and I wonder so helplessly, what can we do? And I feel there's so little that can be done. I feel so helpless, so broken by it, and so less than optimistic. In fact, honestly pessimistic about what our future might hold, and feel so much like the world has become so apathetic to what happens because we've grown so accustomed to it. We feel there's nothing to do, so why bother? But friends, that's not what Paul called the church in Thessalonica, nor does Christ call us as believers to do. To stand by as those who are dead in life, those who have given up hope. Christ calls us to hope, and that's what I love about the story of Ebenezer Scrooge as one example. That Scrooge learned from that. As we uttered in the drama, he gives thanks for the opportunity that he can wipe away that epitaph that is on his own gravestone, that he still has the opportunity to make a change and to live life differently. Not that we earn that grace that God gives to us, not that we can deserve our salvation, but instead that we receive it as a gift, that Christ came and lived and died for us, that we might have life and have it in the full. And that's exactly what we're then called to do, and that is live life to the full. Don't just get along in life to go along, but believe that God has given to you the power and the Spirit within you to be those who are agents of change. Okay, yes, we can't change the world necessarily. And all that's going on in Syria seems like a world away, and we wonder, what can we do? And we feel helpless in it. But we can make a difference right here in this congregation, in our community, in this state, in our nation, and yes, even in the world, as God gives us the opportunity, if we will have hope. That's why I love in the very first part of that line of Ebenezer Scrooge, when he meets the ghost of Christmas yet to come, he says, I fear you more than any specter that I have seen so far. He's afraid. But then almost instantly it shifts and he says, I know that you have come to do me good. I know that I can learn from this. And that's exactly what the Apostle Paul meant in Romans 5 when he said, suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance, character. And character, hope. And then hope does not fail. There is much that we as a nation, we in this world as humanity, suffer. There is such suffering. But that doesn't distract us from hope. Rather, it leads us to it. James says we count our suffering as joy. Not that we want it, not that we're content with it, but rather we're challenged by it to rise up and know that we are children of the light, not of darkness, not those who are called to be asleep, but are called to be awake, to share the glory and the good news of what God has given to us as hope. So let us be children of light and hope. Let us be those who share the love that Christ has given to us with the world. Go then and be the light of the world. Let the love light shine. And know then that we can give thanks to God and to Christmas for the opportunities that are still ahead. Glory be to God in the highest. Glory be.